Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof for BJJ podcast. I'm Joey. No, I'm not. I'm JT. Psych.
What's up, guys? I'm the cool dude on the show.
Lies. It's all lies. And today we are answering the question. We've had this question. Can you get better at BJJ without rolling? Now, this provides, we need a little bit of context.
Who the fuck asked us this question, bro?
No. Come on. Shout out to our boy Ian. He was actually asking it relevant to wrestling. And I actually think it's even harder in wrestling. But he's saying, it's tough. You want to get better. You practice, you train. But then you got a bunch of young guys doing MMA and they just want to brutalize you. Is it possible to get better without doing sparring or minimizing sparring?
Yeah.
And look.
No, I respect the question.
Right?
Yeah,
because
of course.
For some people, they're not trying to be tournament champions. They're not trying to be the hardest dude in the street or anywhere.
And for jits, you're like, well, I train jits. That's my thing.
Yeah.
I just want to get a bit more comfortable with the takedown game.
Yeah.
So can I just play with some wrestling? I'm not trying to engage in that as a hardcore sport as well.
Sure. But I'm going to say not at all. I think, and let me put context around that.
I agree. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll catch you next week.
Cheers, yeah. No, I think the hardest thing about that is the chaos that ensues when you roll is the person can do anything. It's not as simple as I hold the sleeve, I do the thing, I grab the leg, I push the... It's not like that. Someone will just flip on you. And then you're like, this isn't what I practiced. And that is where real jiu-jitsu and real wrestling comes in. Because what I've noticed about the best wrestlers is they scramble. Like the value in the wrestling is in being able to deal with not the normal stuff.
Yeah, it's not that takedown.
No, it's the counter,
the linking,
the bounce,
and the constant, what's the word? Just this refusal to give up position.
Yeah, and adapting, change, post, move, flip, roll.
Yeah.
Come on top.
I fucking hate those guys.
So hard. Shout out Pavel.
Yeah, what's up, Pav? Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's doing a wrestling seminar soon for BJJ folk.
He is up on the North Shore.
Probably will have passed by the time this happens. But if you're on the northern rivers of New South Wales, the north part of this state, check it out. You can look at Jungle Ballina. They've posted the event.
JB's Ballina, shout out. But here's the thing, guys, it doesn't matter what you do. If we looked at it as a science experiment, you can study the theory, right? You can then set up an experiment. If you do not actually run the experiment, you can't know the results. You can theorize, but it's just not true. Because sometimes you don't get the result you expected.
Yeah.
And you could run the same experiment 5, 6, 10, 20 times and get slightly different results each time. But if you don't run the experiment, you can't actually know. And I believe rolling, sparring, whatever your martial art is, that is the truth of the art, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I agree with that. I think the one way I can look at it is what defines mastering something for you. So say for us,
choking fools,
right?
Right.
Crushing souls. For us coming through the path that we did and how we view jiu-jitsu and how we like to engage with it, the scrap, the fight aspect of it is very important to us.
True.
Being I fucking went 100% against that guy, and that's what we do sometimes in training, and that's jiu-jitsu for us.
Sure.
But I also see that there's an alternate kind of journey
experience.
Yeah, where it's that's not a part of it.
Yeah.
And as much as if you're in my world and you're hey, I want to get good at jiu-jitsu, I'm well, this is part of it. This is my reality for jiu-jitsu. But I can also see for folks who sit in that other reality where it's no, I want to play the game. I want to get technically better. I want to explore it. And I'm not trying to compete. And I'm also not I don't train at a gym like that. That's not my approach.
Yeah.
And for that kind of person, I'm well, that's also jiu-jitsu, right? It's just how they choose to engage with it.
Yeah, I understand that. And look, if you talk to Hicks and Gracie, he will say jiu-jitsu was about real fighting, real combat. So if you don't practice, I think the same
which none of us are doing now, right?
No, that's not what we're doing now. But truth be told, if you've got a really good double leg and you can choke someone unconscious, you're going to do better than someone who doesn't have those skills.
Yeah.
You know? Because like, so a friend of mine posted this, Chris Burns is his name, but Bones is his artist name. He is under Hickson now. He trains in America. He says if you don't practice jiu-jitsu with like boxing, if you don't punch when you do jiu-jitsu, then that's not real jiu-jitsu. That's his take on it.
Right.
Look, we can look at this at many different levels. That was a time and a place. In the same way, the jiu-jitsu you do when you do MMA is very different to what you do when you're in the gi and you're doing certain rule sets. But at the end of the day, when someone gives you their full resistance, the theory can fall by the wayside. And that's where you have to make little changes to make it work for you. And I feel that's where the real learnings are. You know, like you might have drilled that armbar a bunch of times and then old mate Sammy Backey comes through with some deep half guard, ultra hench strongman game and
doesn't work.
Didn't work, but it worked on everybody before then.
Yeah.
You're like, dang.
Actually happened.
Actually, Joe's.
He's the first person to stop my
far side
previously
armbar.
Unstoppable armbar.
And it makes you go, maybe there's like a little change I need to make.
Maybe
there.
I shouldn't train with that guy anymore.
Yeah. Maybe don't invite him to train anymore. He's no longer
Maybe
welcome
fuck that
here.
guy.
Yeah, fuck you, Sammy, if you're listening.
But you know, like, let me to finish like where I was going with that. I think like, you know, that question of like, can you get better at it? Well, if depending on what it is to you, yes, you can get better at it without going into that fire. But we would make the argument that fire and that intensity is an integral part of the journey
Of learning.
Yeah, and I think that any I'm trying to think before I qualify this before I say it. I think that any real martial artist would agree.
Yeah.
That you have to go through that because that fire is like that's the hard shit.
It is.
Like you can drill, you can play, you can flow roll, you can like, hey, let's go 50%. But to go 100% against people that are like, you know, could potentially damage you.
Yes.
Where you actually have to see like, wow, this is as stressful as this game can get.
Yes.
And it is just a game. Mm-hmm. Then I think that's it's an essential part of the process.
I agree. And look, I'm going to say this right now, just out of nowhere, but this is something that's been on my mind, Joe.
Oh.
Carter, you know, Pumse, fuck you. Like, if you think that
like forms,
you're doing martial arts, doing that, you're joking. I mean, yeah, maybe a couple of 100 years ago, if you didn't have a training partner and you had really good visualization, you had to practice your movements, maybe with weapons, it made more sense. But if you're just doing Carters and you do Carter competitions, you're going to get poleaxed by someone who can just
do a suplex,
do a good rugby tackle.
Yeah.
Or someone who just picks up a bar stool. Like your double knife hand block is not working there.
Yeah.
So that's a personal grievance of mine. And this is part of why I started to fall out of love with Taekwondo. They started doing Pumse to music.
They call it Pumse?
Pumse. P-O-O-M-S-E. Pumse. And, you know, Kata, we have all seen it, right? Karate, traditional martial arts, Kung Fu. It looks kind of impressive if you don't understand anything about actual combat. And then once you've kind of been punched in the head or you've had to scrap with somebody who's actually not that technical but just really unruly, you're like, God, this is so hard to deal with. That just goes out the fucking door. You know, like same thing, you know, Mike Tyson says everyone's got a plan to get punched in the face.
Yeah. I think, you know, in those systems, it has a place as part of it. You're like, yeah, fair. Okay, I'm sure there's some benefit.
Well, they still do it in judo. They do like set sparring.
Yeah, right.
Like part of your grading, depending on what gym you train at. It's like now the person swings their arm and you grab their arm and you do the throw and wrist lock and bullshit. It's like, man, try and do that on Keller Loxodi. It's not happening. He's going to fucking poleaxe you. So here's the thing, guys. Like, I think if you are worried about injury, you're going to get injured in life. It happens. The better physically prepared you can be, great. And if you don't want to fight young MMA dudes, you can say, I don't want to roll with you, man. You know, that's a whole lot of smoke I'm not interested in. Try and find people who will roll to your cadence. You know, I think there's nothing wrong with that. But you should still roll.
I think it's an essential measure as you age.
Yes.
Like, you know, you got to look after yourself and, you know, there's a point where you're like, okay, I got to be selective now.
Yeah, and that's cool. I'm not speaking down to that.
My point to add to that is there's got to be some benefit to it, right? Like if you're not doing any wrestling, but then once a week you're just drilling a shitload of it,
Sure,
it's going to help.
Sure,
and so if you're asking the question, like if you're like, well, is it better than nothing? Absolutely,
of course.
Is it going to make you a proficient wrestler? Probably not.
No.
Good one.
All right, nice.
Thank you, fam. Hey, guys, if you want more help from us, obviously we've got this epic podcast, which you're already here, so you know about that. Go to our YouTube channel. We've been nourishing that thing for the last year and a bit. We're putting up a couple of videos every week. You can watch the podcast on the channel. We do the video version. But we also have other videos where we go deep on strength and mobility. And JT's even talking about doing a fucking hot wings challenge. He thinks he can hang with me.
That's not true.
On the chili eating front. So we'll see what's up.
It'll just be great because Joe thinks he's really chili tough. And then
I don't. I just live the life.
Oh,
I'm
God.
just stoic about my approach to eating hot sauce. I don't try and put it on anybody else.
Bullshit.
But he thinks it's a flex because everything's
It's
a flex,
always
right?
a flex with Joe, man. But what I'm saying is stay tuned because these podcasts are going to get infinitely more interesting.
So yeah, check it out. Thank you. Love you guys. See you next week.
Peace.